Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where we have our very first major final of the season set. In games where refereeing decisions dominated the post-match discourse, Linfield bested the Swifts, Portadown outlasted mid-Ulster rivals Glenavon in semi-finals to set up the Premiership versus Championship League Cup showdown for March. We're going to review all of the big calls in those games, recap another weather-impacted weekend in the top flight. We'll ask, what does this January transfer window still have for us left in store? All on your latest weekly edition of Kicking Match. Thank you very much for joining me this week. If you're, a long-time listener or you're just a new convert, may as well plug it at the start for a little change. If you are not a follower or subscriber to the pod, you can do that if you listen to me via Spotify or via Apple Podcasts. Super easy, it's free, just a little button there on the program page, and it means that you are one of the first ones to know when a brand new podcast is out. And I mean, the way things are going at the minute, with all these great games, with all these transfer news that are coming out, you want to get your fix of Kick a Match ASAP. And with that, with haste, let's get my guests in this week. It's great to welcome back to the pod, scribe and fellow podcaster. Hello, Ali McCalmont.
Hi, Peter. Happy end of January. It's been a long old month.
We are almost there. I know. I feel like we've given up saying Happy New Year to everybody, but now I'm suddenly looking at that little calendar tick away and I'm thinking, my goodness, we are nearly in February. Well done, all you dry January people, because you have nearly made it.
Yeah.
And with January comes the cold weather, I know we'll talk about all the time. And unfortunately, what comes around with it, and it's impacting this podcast as well as fans and television broadcasts, dodgy weather. I mean, the storm was the storm, the cold snap was the cold snap, but we come here with 4 games to talk about. It's all weather related once again. I'm not here to go through all of the sides when it comes to this discussion, but you must say, and I actually don't know which way you lean on this, but this lottery, it feels like, with games being on, off because of the weather and because it's January, it is frustrating.
Yeah, it can get a little bit difficult, and it's kind of the price we pay for having that sort of season that we have, but it does get a little bit difficult. And obviously we've got some games coming up midweek this week as well. I think the Northwest final's already gone, but there's a couple of finals coming up this week. It'd be terrible for them to be off. And obviously we had the 2 big semi-finals last week. I'm sure we'll touch on them at some stage. But if we think back to last week, I mean, Tuesday morning was really bad in the morning, and we thought, are these 2 games going to get cancelled? And would have been awful for Glenavon Portadown game to be off, and also Dungarvan against Linfield. 2 big games which would have had to be put back and tried to squeeze in the calendars. But thankfully the rain came that day and washed away the snow, and we managed to get the 2 semi-finals in, which was good. Unfortunately, we lost the game on Friday, and we and Gill lost one on Saturday. So it does sort of curtail, and you always like to look at a league table when it's everybody's played the same amount of games. As soon as it becomes a few games behind, it's difficult to sort of gauge where teams are at a little bit, especially at the top, and with the Cliftonville one just being 1 game behind there, you would really love it for them to get on the same game so as you can really sort of see where we're heading to. But yeah, it's frustrating, but we've got to get on with it.
I know we're somewhat blessed by this unnaturally perfect Premier League in England where almost every game goes ahead, and if it doesn't, it is like almost headline news. And there's plenty of games up and down the leagues in England and Scotland that are being booted off for weather related reasons. But when we want this league to progress, and we have now, I think that's, at least off the top of my head, that's the 2nd televised game which has had to be binned this season because of weather related issues, and we are looking to get broadcasters in. If you can't guarantee that your game is going to happen, that is just that's kind of a big deal. And I don't know what the solution is, if it's something that can be or should be fixed by a hard decision, because I know some people will point to all the artificial surfaces, but we don't know the long-term future of artificial surfaces in their current makeup because of European law when it comes to the rubber infill. So we could see that coming down the track where we become a completely rubber infill league, and then that can't happen in the next 5 years. That's something that can't be there long term. So we don't know what the issue is. And of course, we have had one occasion this season where the Dungannon plastic pitch still didn't pass through a weather-related issue there. So, that's not it. We'll not get into all that. But you're absolutely right. That game last Tuesday, League Cup semi-final between Portadown and Glenavon. I know the Dungannon Linfield one also happened, Dungannon. But, that one, you had the stream going on with that. Big bumper crowd, pretty much sellouts or almost sellouts in both ends. That was a big occasion. And for it to be wiped away because of the weather, and it's because of it being played at one of the worst periods that you can play sport outside, you're thinking, what are we doing here sometimes? But we will park all discussions about that, and we will maybe just touch upon those League Cup games. Why not? Because they have now, it's set up a big final penciled in for March. We'll start with the Mid-Ulster Derby because it seemed to be the one that most people have probably seen. Portadown win out. Strange little game. Lots of frustrations from both sets of fans in regards to the impact the referee had the game, but I gotta say the atmosphere just was electric for that game.
Yeah, the last point you've made there, I couldn't agree more. I was at the game. I was working at the game with sort of the TV company I was with, and they were streaming the game as you mentioned, but we were on the Portadown side. Now obviously it helps that we were on the side that won the game in the end of the day, but last Tuesday night they were really up for the game. Whether it was the fact that they were going in as underdogs and up against it and championship time and whatnot, but they were fantastic from the minute they arrived. Their songs were good, and they just kept going the whole game. Got that penalty after 20 or so minutes, and that just gave them something to hold on to. And from the minute one, and I have to say at the end of the game, Glenavon fans maybe won't sort of say the same thing, but the scenes at the end were special. I have to say, the fans sort of stuck around and give the players a good send off there for getting to the final. And as I say, they've been maligned in the past for being a little bit overcritical, the Ports fans. But when they're good, they're good. Let's put it that way. And Niall Curry, again, some people like he's a bit Marmite character, but he's got it right there, and they've got their final. But the whole game was it wasn't, like, let's say it wasn't the highest quality of standard of game, but Portadown, I think, certainly deserved their place in the final. They really nullified Glenavon after coming off a good result at Carrick the week before. They really nullified Glenavon, and I think they deserved it. Whether or not it was a penalty, I've had many's a back and forward with a few people about whether it was a penalty, and the good thing was we can all watch it back now and see it, and make your own mind up. I personally probably would say it wasn't a penalty, in that the ball had gone wide and he wasn't getting over the keeper to tuck it into the net. If that had been the case, certainly it was a penalty. But look, it was given. There were other incidents. Certainly the Callum Burney non-sending off at the end, probably the highlight. But a few refereeing decisions that maybe were a little bit questionable. But overall, a fantastic occasion, really it was. And obviously the Reds fans went home the happier.
You pinpoint all the big moments with the penalty and the Callum Burney non-red card, and I was on the other side of both of them. I was very surprised that was a penalty for Portadown. It felt as though Zach Barr, well, he had already taken his shot. He had poked it wide, and then he fell into the keeper rather than being taken down by the keeper. Interestingly, Steve McDonald, the Glenavon manager, thought it was a penalty, but I mean, if you are a fan of the side that gets blown against, I mean, you're absolutely furious, especially the fact that was the difference between the sides. And then the Callum Burney laid on tackle on the Portadown player, which would have been a second yellow to send him off. It was late in the game. I mean, I think that's a fairly run-of-the-mill yellow card. It takes the player out in free-flowing running, and it really took him out. It's quite cynical. But I mean, if you watch that game in full, there was just yellow cards for absolutely everything. I mean, both sets of fans were being driven mad by it. And then in the big occasion, the big moment, as much as it probably wouldn't have an impact, it was so late in the game, then that wasn't a yellow card. You're thinking, what is going on? And that is really frustrating for fans, because the one thing you ask for is consistency. If it's consistently soft yellows, then there you go. If it's consistently not being called for what you might say is being on top of a player, shippling, whatever, then that's just the lay of the land in this game, regardless of how people feel about it. So those were the key decisions that went against and for both teams. Portadown went out. I mean, I thought Glenavon simply didn't turn up. I watched them the Saturday beforehand, and I thought, my goodness, Glenavon are potentially going to tear this Portadown team apart, and they're going to score early, and they're going to keep the pressure on, especially at home. But they just were not there. All the key players that sparkled against Carrick weren't to be seen. And McDonald tried to fire on a whole load of extra players, and it didn't seem to change the game significantly. Maybe Robbie Garrett had a bit of an impact, but they just couldn't get going up front. And then for Portadown, they just had this very clear tactic of play it long and try and beat the man, and they did it time after time. It was very basic, but it worked. And Zach Barr beating pretty much, because Danny Walls had a head start on him, beating him in a foot race was what won that penalty. And I don't think Zach Barr, as much as I haven't followed his career, has an electric turn of pace himself. So, I mean, Portadown had a game plan. It worked really well. They missed a bag load of chances, and they're now in a final. Incredible. They won this trophy last time out when they're in the championship. I mean, that would be one of the stories of the season if they were to do it against Linfield, who are their opponents. But if you're a Portadown fan who's just had multiple seasons probably of just down and out misery almost, this must have felt great. And to be in the championship and looks to struggle almost week in and week out against championship opposition, as somebody messaged me, they're now unbeaten against top flight opposition. That is just a mad stat.
Yeah, Neil, a post game, I had an interview with Niall Curry, and he actually did mention that they've matched and beaten now Loughgall Crusaders in this competition in the League Cup. Loughgall Crusaders are now gone on and beaten Glenavon, and they've not looked out of place in any of those games. They've matched their opponents, if not been better.
And Carrick in the Irish Cup
Irish
as well.
Cup as well with Carrick. We'll gloss over that one, Peter. Yeah, but they've certainly matched their Premiership opponents. But what he did also say, and to be fair to him, he says we've matched the Premiership opponents, but in the Championship we've looked out of our depth on occasions against Championship teams, which could be quite Portadownish if you want. That they could go on and win a League Cup here and end up not getting promotion if they don't sort of finish the season well, which would be very Portadown. That they get the highs and the lows, massive high of going and winning a trophy and then not getting back into the Premiership, which, let's be fair, everybody does expect them to do so. But looking at them, I've seen them sort of twice in the last few weeks, as you've so kindly mentioned there. That they look that the team should go ahead now. They've got Zach Barr as the focal point up front there, and he looks to have been a good acquisition that gives them that sort of bounce off player that they can't hit him and get these players around him. Ryan Mays looks to have found a wee bit of form, and Kieran Dobbin as well coming in. But as you mentioned on a previous pod, they've not only got players in there Portadown, they've picked up players from other sort of rival players from teams that are in and around them. So a good bit of business, as they would say, from the Ports, but they've still got the job to do. And I know there's the other factor as well, that maybe players will be looking towards that final in March now and take their eye off the ball a little bit in the league, and they really can't afford to do that in the Championship because it's a cracking league this year.
Well, they're fighting on many fronts, and I felt bad for Glenavon fans, because you're sitting there with your rivals who you've bested numerous times. It's in your home stadium. You've packed it out with well over 1,000 and a bit fans, and I mean, they just did not turn up. Like, what an opportunity they had to go back to the final. It feels like actually a bit of a hot minute since Glenavon actually have been back to a final. No, they had a good run in the mid 2010s there, but they let that slip through their fingers, and in many ways they can only look at themselves in the mirror and blame themselves, because Portadown did all right, but Glenavon somewhat defeated themselves there. But like, if Portadown are to have a glorious day at Windsor Park, they will have slain an absolute giant. Linfield beat out Dungannon in that other semi-final at Stangmore Park, so it's the two away teams who win on that night. And this was a tight little game. Dungannon flared and showed all of their skill, fight, and Linfield go down to 10 men because Eunice gets sent off. And once again, it's the referee in the spotlight here because the second goal, which gives Linfield that goal advantage come the final whistle, is this really confusing and bizarre goal when you see it. And it all centres around, was Matthew Fitzpatrick, well, there's no questioning he was offside, but was he active in the play? Like, I want referees to be really clear, not just throw the flag up every time they see an offside player or a player they think's offside. But I mean, that must have been so confusing for the Dungannon back line, and I think it absolutely played a key part in Cam McLean picking up that ball and eventually, after one or two tries, putting the back of the net.
I obviously was keeping an eye on that while I was watching the Glenavon game. I was keeping really over that game, and I watched the interviews afterwards. And I'm going to probably mention this later on about managers and players and coaches all shouting about referees' decisions and stuff. But I was amazed how cool and calm Rodney McAree was after that game, because my club's obviously a little provincial sort of club, and Dungannon some similar. Linfield get the finals left, right, and centre. Dungannon, this was their massive chance to get to a League Cup final again. I know they've won it fairly recently, but they don't come around too often. For that decision, I mean, anybody that's watched that, surely you cannot come away and think that he wasn't interfering with play. He's literally a yard to 2 yards away from Cal McLean as he goes through. So surely the defenders are thinking, right, and stop even for a split second. The goalkeeper's going to stop for a split second. The back four is going to stop for a split second. And yes, the flag can go up but you've got to have a discussion. There didn't seem to be any discussion between officials about what's going on here. And I remember one last year in the Premier League, in the Manchester Derby was something similar, where Rashford went quite close to the ball. But if you're that close to the ball, I mean, you've got to be interfering with play. And it sort of took it away a little bit as it put it 2-0. But whenever Dungannon get that goal back and the final score is 2-1, it just all highlights again. And I just feel for Dungannon a little bit, because this was a big opportunity for them at home, and things just didn't go their way. They're playing better now, and they hung into the game, but just that took away all the gloss of the game. Unfortunately for me, just that one decision.
I feel for managers in that situation because I agree with you. As much as I talk about Glenavon feeling as though they had a great opportunity there, Dungannon will feel as though they had a real fight on their hands and they weren't aided due to a decision that they felt was wrong. There's always going to be human error here, but after seeing those two games, the highlights of them, looking back at the Crusaders game, which I talked so much about last week in the podcast, I then was at, not to a huge extent, I guess, in this game, but I was at Linfield against Crusaders on Saturday, and I mean, there was lots of minor complaints to the referee's decision making in that game. No big moments, and it stuck with me just what Stephen Baxter said, or at least in my head, at least he said, talking about how referees coming out and explaining decisions or backing it up, and I like, it almost seems strange that the managers are hand tied and they're sitting there going, well, I'm not allowed to complain too much about the referee or the decision making. I know it's human error and it's respect for the referees and they don't have the ability to come out and defend themselves. Maybe they should. Maybe they should come out and explain what happened. I know they're probably explaining to the managers, but these are big moments. And I don't want anybody to face abuse or any of that type of stuff. But this is,
Yeah, I feel quite strongly about this one. And look, I'll be a little bit controversial maybe and go against you on this one, because I kind of see where people are coming from. And if a referee comes out and explains, for example, why he made that decision in the Linfield game, or the Crusaders penalty from the other week, that's okay. But for me, football just has become such a partisan and one blinkered sort of way of looking at things. And I just think if referees come out and give explanations, we'll just hammer them for the explanation rather than the decision. Then we'll start to pick through every single word that they've said, and oh, he can't say that, and because they're doing that kind of thing with VAR in the Premier League now. Hardware was told to come out and give these, and as soon as he comes out and explains how the referee came about it, then they pick on that. So if it goes against your team, it's just the way football is now. I'm afraid it's just gone so bipartisan. If it's for you, it's great. If it's against you, it's not. And I think we want. I mean, you mentioned the word consistency. I don't ever think we'll ever get consistency across game by game. My problem with the Portadown game, as you've kind of mentioned, was there was inconsistency within the game. So it was the same referee making the different decisions within the game. And I think we can expect maybe a little bit better there. But from game to game, you're going to get different decisions. And I just think we create our own problem here because as fans, as managers, as coaches, and as players, we now want every decision in our favour. And I'm looking at every game now, looking for every tackle, every penalty, every red, screaming for cards, players going down, and we create our own problem then because then the referees say, well, you were cheating there, or you didn't try that, and then they say, well, I'm not going to give that, and then if it doesn't go for you, they're then picking up on other things. So just it's an extremely difficult area to get into because we just want what we want. Everybody wants their own decisions in their own way, and sometimes you got to look back and say, if that went against us, would we be happy with it or whatever? And if we're honest, but we're not often honest, unfortunately.
It's something that it's a continuing topic. It's a hot topic everybody brings up, and it will be something no doubt we will talk about moving forward. But look back at the past 7 days. That's what this podcast is all about in the Irish League. And I mean, the past week for Linfield, everything pretty much has come up Millhouse. They are able to slink away back to Windsor Park from the Swifts with that place in the final in their pocket. Like I said, that's going to happen the 10th of March. Big Sunday game there. And then at Windsor, they host Crusaders and they get away 1-0. They are top of the tree still. In fact, all of the top teams that played there got a victory, so it was imperative that Linfield kept themselves going there. And despite all their frailties, despite everything that hasn't gone their way, I actually thought Crusaders grew into this game, give a good account themselves, and maybe Linfield are tired from all these games, coming thick and fast, a bit of a hangover from Tuesday, but I thought Linfield didn't really play up to their usual standards in this game. I think a part of that also might be the fact that they are still missing a lot of their key players, but it's a big run by Josh Archer, who scores his first goal for Linfield there. And as I'm sure many Linfield fans will say, these are the games that you need to win if you want to be champions. They will move on, forget about this game because it was 3 points in the bag.
Yeah, it was another struggle. Ultimately successful afternoon for Linfield, and David Healy will be delighted to get it over with and get away. You mentioned about the games there. I mean, I think you were at the game, but I mean, from seeing what I've seen, the only real piece of quality in the game was the goal. Archer third man run from midfield broke the back line, but I think the best bit about it wasn't the fact that he broke the line. He got through, but then he was under a lot of pressure and managed to hold off the defender, showed his strength. And then I could see a lot of the times those sort of shots skewing off and going left and right, but he managed to ping it into the corner. And he's been one of those players for Linfield that's been out on loan for a couple of seasons, but now with a few injuries in the middle of the park there, he's got his opportunity. And probably the worst news he got this week was Chris Shields signing a new 2-year contract the other day, because that's another one he's got to go against him. But obviously brilliant for the Blues to get him in. But just more generally on Linfield, it just from my point of view, it just seems that there's a sort of a slow and progressive movement here that they're trying to move in forward areas into younger players again. Obviously, it's sometimes on them a wee bit because of injuries and things. But you're looking at Archer now, McGee, McBrain, whichever you wish, and that Doherty, all coming in now and getting starts, and that could be really valuable for David Healy because he can bring these players in now and trust them a wee bit, and he can rest Cooper, he can rest McKay, and then these players that are coming back, like Fallon, I think was on the bench on Saturday. He can ease these guys back in there, and rather than throwing them straight back into to 90 minutes. He can give them 10, 15 minutes there, give Cooper a rest, and just bringing those young players through. And you mentioned a couple of weeks back about the signing of McGee. I know you kind of mentioned previously that he played wide at Dungannon, but I can see him maybe taking over. Everybody wants to take over from Jimmy Mulgrew, but it's been very difficult for years. But I could see him going into midfield there eventually for Linfield and maybe being that box to box player. He's got a wee bit about him, and I like that signing for Linfield. I could see him just sitting in front of Chris Shields maybe in the next few years. But for Linfield, everybody's looking at the here and now maybe, but maybe just quietly in the background they're building away for the next few years, which is a bit difficult for the rest of them.
You've set me up beautifully here. He started as right back, Ethan McGee there, and I mean, I just thought he oozed class. He did not look out of place. This is not a player that you could go, that's somebody who's not used to playing with this team and is trying to get up to speed. He looked calm. He looked assured. He looked so confident on the ball. Had the wherewithal to sit back, try and pick out a pass. He knew when to move, and he is a player where he really could find himself anywhere beyond the centre back. Really, you can maybe even play centre back. I just thought he had such agility and ability, and I was very, very impressed with him. He's one of the players where I thought Linfield have got this really, really right with him. And look, this wasn't a completely negative experience from a Linfield point of view. I kind of highlight some of the frustrations from the home fans at Windsor Park. They tried so many times to play the ball over the top or try and get their runners going forward. And I mean, I don't know if there's a counter for offside flags, but it just kept coming and coming and coming. Be it Fitzpatrick, be it Miller, be it anybody. And in fact, that Josh Archer goal that was scored, that was the one that actually came off. They were trying those type of balls over and over and over again. It was a brilliant little ball as well onto him. And, well done to Josh Archer. I'm sure he absolutely loved that first goal at Windsor in a game that gets them the points. He's had a really extended run in this team and his future with that team. I'm sure he'll want to establish it. With Val coming back, there'll be questions. Chris Shields isn't back and ready, but that is a big bit of business for them to commit to him for 2 more years in his early to mid 30s there. So look, they've seen the way G Mulgrew has continued to be an impacting player for this team, and they clearly think that Shields will have the legs and the ability to do that. And I still thought Mulgrew was able to pull the strings in midfield. And late on the game, they bring on McKee, and they particularly brought on Cooper. And you go, this team still has a couple of more gears to go up, and they still do not have their best team. And I mean, even Cooper coming onto the pitch, he was able to stretch the field even further, showed that bit of quality and class that he has. He is truly one of the best players in the league. And for Crusaders, they have been down in the dumps, and the injury issues that are there was very much highlighted in this game. They throw their brand new 6'6" signing Kevin Joshua in from the start at centre back to play alongside Billy Joe Burns. I know he's played there a fair bit, but there's your right back slotted into centre back. You bring in a brand new player to play a centre back. You've got Jordan Forsyth as right back. At half time, you then have to change things up, and then there's Laurie playing at centre back beside BJ Burns, and you're thinking, my goodness, this is a Crusaders team which is taped together. You have no Heatley due to suspension, and I must say, Crusaders were really good in the tackle. They were able to stop a lot of the Linfield attacks before they could get into the box. It was just really good position play, really good in the duels there, and they just couldn't capitalise when they got their opportunities up front. But Linfield defended very, very well. I mean, Jordan Owens came on at halftime, and he actually changed the game for Crusaders. His ability to just get those knockdown balls was excellent, and you had Stuart Nixon get a full game there for Crusaders. That's a big jump up for him. So, Crusaders will see in the form table another loss here, but when it comes to performance point of view, I thought, you know what, Crusaders were well in this, and even though Linfield were probably the better team, there was a situation, and even late on this could have happened. Crusaders could have nicked something from this very, very easily.
You were at the game, as I say, so tell me what you thought of that second half, old school scrumash in the Linfield 6-yard box. It was brilliant on the highlights, because you see the ball going into the 6-yard box. It was just like the old days. There's 20 people in that 6-yard box, and the ball disappears. You can't even see where the ball is. You don't know where it's going to appear. And could it appear to a red and black shirt just to kick it in? But If that had been live, it would have been excellent to watch. There was about 20 people trying to get on the ball.
Well, Mulgrew did very, very well to jump on top of it. And I mean, if Cruz were to get anything from it, it probably would have felt like a bit of a kick in the teeth for Linfield because they had control of the game but never were able to get it out of sight. Every time maybe a 10-minute patch will go through where Linfield have control of the ball but aren't able to get any real strike on goal, all of a sudden Crusaders will go close. And unfortunately there was a few, and there's only a limited opportunities, a few times for Crusaders where in that key moment the ball balloons wide and the Linfield fans are thinking that is a let off. So what I really got from that game is Linfield are winning week in and week out, and even when they're not in full flow, they are still able to play consistently and win those battles overall. And I do think they will get caught out, and I think they have got caught out a few times, but again, gotten away with it. I'm thinking of the Carrick game, the Warren Point game, the Dungannon game so far this season. At some point, this will happen. But as we now think about the league in terms of how many games are left, and the fact that we've only got 12, and this stat has been thrown about quite a bit, this form at Windsor is the real backbone of this team. It was the backbone last season. Their real fault last year was their inability to take 3 points in games against other top six sides. But what they've always been brilliant at is beating the bottom six sides, but also their home form. The only side, or the only sides in the past, whatever it is, 2-3 years, that have won at Windsor is Larne and Glentoran. And I don't think Glentoran play any more league games at Windsor. So it's pretty much Larne is the only team who has a bit of history against Linfield that I guess recent history and form has indicated are likely to get any points. So there's only a small little slither of games that Larne and Cliftonville are hoping that Linfield will slip up on. Like I said, Linfield have left the door open and then shut it quite quickly at times, but I mean, it's a case now of just keeping your head above water if you're Linfield.
I think you're right there in terms of looking at Saturday's game as an overall sort of picture that they are just getting over the line. But David Healy was quite bullish in his press conference afterwards to say, "Look at the league table. We're not doing too bad here," and he's right. But look, I mean, the options are still there for the other teams. You know, they're not going away, and it's been a great title race so far. I'm sure we'll come on to the other two teams in the title race in a minute, but it's been really good to see they're sort of taking it to another stage, and even dropping 2 points is now looking at that's a loss. You know, I mean, it's really good that the league has got that stage, and you know it is. From my point of view, we'll come on to Cliftonville, but I'd like to see the three teams going head to head for the rest of the season, and Linfield, Larne, and Cliftonville really slugging it out. Be really good.
We're going to park that little title race there and we'll go to an exciting another little tussle, and that's now for these European places. Four will eventually become two at the end of the season, and after last week, Glenavon beating Carrick to all of a sudden sit up there in the top six again. Results don't go the way.
Whisper it quietly.
Games get called off, and it's now Carrick who are sitting up there in sixth. Of course, sixth or seventh will get you to the dance, but I mean, this is going to be an exciting couple of games for all of these teams. I know in many ways Coleraine are the incumbents, and they're the team with everything to lose here, but they were the team that, like they have done week in and week out recently, are on the wrong end of result. Carrick Rangers go to the showgrounds, 2-0 is the score. And like so many times we've seen this season, Carrick's biggest highs usually come off the back of some of their lowest lows.
It's so right. You're so right. It's a massive win for Carrick Rangers on the back of those two fairly poor performances at home against the two mid-Ulster sides in the cup against Portadown and then Glenavon in the league in the new year here. They're in sixth, and there've been a lot of conjecture in the past few weeks that where were we going and stuff, but they were sitting 2 points off and went ahead and beat Coleraine on Saturday and moved up into that position. Now, as you've mentioned, it's really really tight there, and they could easily within the next 7 days, 10 days, drop down to ninth in a heartbeat. So I mean, sitting in sixth right now is fantastic. Don't get me wrong for Carrick Rangers, but sixth and seventh is the goal. But that's another really interesting point of the league. It's not just about the top three, and usually in the league you're looking at two teams playing for sixth and seventh, and it doesn't really matter, sixth or seventh. You're not gonna. But this is now six, seven, eight, nine, and I would even go down to Dungannon. Have still got a shot at it, definitely. So it's going right to the wire here. This is going to be, as you say, two places are up for grabs between maybe five teams, and over the next few weeks, one will maybe drop away and then catch up. We but like maybe a cycle race in the Tour de France or something. They'll drop off the pace, and then suddenly you see them coming back again to tag on at the back, and it could go either way in the next few weeks. But for Carrick, that's a fantastic result away at Coleraine. As it's been well documented by the manager and the team, they haven't won there in 30 years, and some of the players hadn't even been born when that happened. But to go there and not nick it, they didn't nick it. They played quite well. Coleraine, yes, had the bulk of play, but just showed a lack of confidence. Coleraine really just a lack of confidence in front of goal, and they were really relying on McKendry's left peg, as they have been quite a lot during this season, picking one out. They did have one really gilt-edged opportunity from McGonigal, but that didn't go their way. And then Carrick's goal looked scruffy, really scruffy goal from Cush. He didn't hit that one like he used to do, but scruffed it in the corner. But if you look back at the goal, it actually was a really well worked goal. Came from the left back area, played in the midfield, came back, knocked up to Danny Purkis, and he kind of skinned his fullback, got it into the box, and then there was that sort of pinball, and Cushley finished it. And then that just plays into Carrick Rangers away form at the minute. They can sit back with a one-goal lead and just play on the break, and that's exactly what they did. And um, they nicked the second one in a couple of minutes to go. Danny Purkis nicked the second one, but a really really big big win for them, and their away form has been really really good this season, far better than the home form. And I know around the club they've been looking at ifs and buts and maybes. They've lost to Newry, Ballymena, Glenavon twice at home, and drew with Loughgall. The only team in the bottom six that they've beaten was Dungannon, and that was with a last minute penalty. So, ifs and buts. If you win half of those games, you're well clear in sixth. But it might not be overly popular here at the club, but I do think they need to look at this playing surface now. I used to get really really annoyed about clubs coming down saying, "Oh, we got to play on that pitch and stuff." But with the squad they've got now, it's maybe turning the other way, that they do need a better surface to play on, and sort of get the ball down and play a wee bit. But that's maybe for the next set of matches, next set of seasons to come in. But be nice to get a really good pitch to play on.
Maybe you're referring to something else, but in my eyes, you're talking about just how bobbly that pitch is. I was at that Carrick Glenavon game, and it was just so bobbly. The ball would go maybe a foot in front of any player, and you just didn't know what direction it was going to bounce in next. And you're right. Like, you see these results going for Carrick away from home on these different surfaces, and perhaps a bit of that is because Carrick break very, very well. I think Danny Purkis is underrated as a player with a bit of speed and the momentum he can build up dribbling and driving forward. I mean, he is top quality player in this league. I mean, he has everything you'd want from a striker. He has his off days like anybody, but when he has the ball at his feet, I mean, he is so dangerous. And on top of that, I want to give a bit of shine to a player I don't think probably gets enough shine. That's 2 weeks in a row where I think Glendinning in goals has been a big part of the performance. I know it didn't go well against Glenavon, but he stood tall on a number of occasions against Coleraine, and that's a team with plenty of firepower, and he kept them at bay in that game.
Yeah, a lot of chat at Carrick actually about the goalkeeping situation, and Ross has been very very good for us for a good couple of years now, and I would throw it out there as a shot stopper. He is right up top of the league, I think. I mean, as you say, against Glenavon, there were a few pot shots from outside, which looked like they were going to curl inside the far post, and he's reached across a couple of times and pushed them by. the only criticism I would have with Ross, and it's with the fan base, is coming for crosses, coming for high balls. Is he likes to sit in the 6 yard box quite a lot in our league. Sometimes that's not the done thing. You've got to come out and demand the ball and command your box a little bit more. But as a shot stopper, he's been fantastic. And that stop he had on Saturday against McGonigal was absolutely crucial because, as I say, if Coleraine nicked the first goal there, suddenly their mentality changes a little bit. They've got a goal ahead, but keeps him in the game. It's a one-on-one. He stands up tall, and he's very good in one-on-one situations as well as the shot stopping. So yeah, look, he's. I mean, as we've talked about in previous pods here, Peter, I'm a big fantasy football man, as you know, and poor old Ross is sitting at the bottom of the table at the minute because Carrick haven't been keeping too many clean sheets, and obviously that unmentionable at Crusaders earlier in the season cost him a few points, but certainly in terms of winning games for his and keeping clean sheets for his club, he's doing a real good job.
Well, sticking with Carrick before we talk about Coleraine, your manager Stuart King talked about this after the game. He talks about 12 cup finals between now and the end of the season. What is a top side 6 team? Let's just call it the traditional top 6 and be done with it. I mean, you only have 3 more games against traditional top 6 sides between now and the end of the season. So out of those 12, 9 of them are quote unquote bottom 6 sides. You are currently 6th. This is in your hands, isn't it? It's totally in your hands to take. Forget what happened the rest of the season. You've now got a brand new league, brand new competition, no other cups. It's now about getting into this playoff. It might not last very long, but that 6th place is still an advantage, and you never know where it can go after that. So, despite probably feeling a bit gutted last week from that Glenavon result, now you can see the road in front of you, and the goal is very clear. Win out, and you've got a chance for a little trip to, I don't know, Montenegro.
Listen, I think you made a really good point earlier on when you first brought up the game that Carrick have been extremely resilient this year, and I think that's been the big change since this year. But not only that, last year when Stuart King came in, very down to earth, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He knows there's going to be tough days ahead at the club he's at, and there have been. But they've been able to bounce back really well from poor periods of form, and this year especially, as you've mentioned there. So that win again, and I'm going to take you and him to task actually because we did take him to task about this because he mentioned that very stat that he said 9 out of the 12 games will be against traditional bottom 6 sides. What happens if they finish 6th? That's not really true then, is it? Because you're going to have to play the top 5 then. So it's a different thing. So if you finish 6th, you're no longer playing the bottom 5 sides, and that should be the goal now. We should want to finish 6th because that guarantees you a shot at European football. And you're rightly saying it may last one game, but that's not the point. That's the goal for the club. He wants Stuart is a very, very ambitious manager. That's why the club brought him in, because of his ambition and his hunger. And he continues to show that week in, week out. He's not everybody's cup of tea, but he's damn sure he's popular at Carrickfergus Rangers. You know what I mean? And if he took us to 6th or 7th, he's just making another step on the ladder. That he said he was going to. So it'd be great to get those playoffs this year. It really would.
That stat where the last time Carrick went out at the Coleraine Showgrounds being 1994, like a top 6 finish. Carrick in this day and age is like a multi-decade best performance. It would be incredible now for them, but it was a great day for Carrick. But we've talked about it a couple of weeks. That is what, the 6th loss in a row for all competitions for Coleraine. It's like they've had one win in almost double figures now, around there somewhere. As much as sure King is a popular man in Carrickfergus, unfortunately Oran Kearney is just not that. His side are looking meek. They're losing consistently here. That loss to Carrick is just another one chalked up. It's from bad to worse to terrible. Like, what was your making of the performance from Coleraine? We saw all 3 of their January editions there play, but there's new players, but the results are currently staying the same, and they are now absolutely on the outside looking in when it comes to the top 6. Look, it's 1 point difference, but they're not getting results from anywhere, And I'm sure for Coleraine, the absolute bare minimum was sixth. That was standing still. The idea was to push forward. So, I mean, they're going to be scrapping between now and the end of the season just to meet the lowest of expectations they had.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about the three players coming in. It made no difference really. They just look bereft of confidence, and there's not. I get that there's a three-team league at the top and they are above everybody else, but there's not a massive amount between the rest of the teams. And sometimes it does just come down to momentum, confidence, and how you're playing, a style of play. And they just looked like there was just no style of play that they used to have under Oran Kearney, and you just knew what you were getting with Coleraine and going up there. I can assure you, Carrick fancied their chances just at the time of playing Coleraine. They really fancied their chances, and I was at the Glenavon game against Carrick last week, and I had the radio on in the background, and every single goal that was going in at the Oval, I just thought this is getting serious now, and I'm sure everybody was the same. This is a game changer. You don't lose 6-0 in an Irish League game and don't feel the pressure. And I thought that this could be a game changer, as I say. But the board, to be fair, stood firm with him and gave him his chance to reset. And I've just been following the Coleraine story quite a bit over the past few weeks. I've no real insight into the club itself, but I've just been watching around. Just this media stuff going around right now. I mean, obviously, totally deplore all the personal stuff that Oran Kearney's getting and has had, but I just found it quite sort of contradictory in terms of the two sides of the media side. Stuart King mentioned after the game that some of the stuff that was coming out of Coleraine pre-match was about how this was the reset. We're going to get going this weekend, and that really motivated the Carrick players. And I've just watched Oran Kearney's interviews over the past few weeks, and he's always been kind of pushing it down the line a wee bit to the next week and the next week and the next week. And I suppose when your job's under pressure, that's maybe what you do. But pre sort of January and December, it was we're going to get to January and get some players in the next few weeks. Then he got the players in, and then last week he was saying we're going to get some players back from injury. They're slowly coming back. We'll be all right next week. And then this week he was sort of saying, Jamie McGonigal would have scored that if he had another few weeks. He'll maybe score that in a few weeks' time. So he just kind of keeps kicking it down the line a wee bit. And for me, somewhere along the line, if he doesn't get results fairly quickly, that's that kicking it down the can. The can's going to come, be stood on, and that will be that, I'm afraid. And it's a huge weekend this weekend for Coleraine when Glenavon come.
Well, one thing I didn't say there before about this race for Europe is that it's two leagues, isn't it? Because if you get into sixth within the next 7 games, that's you locked in. And then there's 5 more games where you can lose everything else, then the other teams are battling. So, I mean, there is a time limit for whoever happens to be sitting in sixth first, and then you have the split where there's 5 more games where teams can win out, and it means zilch to the sixth team there. So, like, for Coleraine, you've seen with massive hammerings at the likes of Glentoran, when they've faced adversity, they've capitulated. And it's clear that this squad, this team, is not up to what Coleraine want to do. And as much as they can continue to make alterations in January, they can't make the overhaul that I'm sure they'll want to in regards to not only incomings but outcomings. It does look so difficult now for them because as much as we talk about for Carrick, how they have teams in the traditional bottom 6 in the majority for the next couple of games, between now and that split, Coleraine have 3 games against traditional bottom 6 sides. It's all tough games against your Linfields and your Lawrence and everybody else, bar Glenavon this weekend, Newry, and by the time the Swifts come around, it might be home and hose, and they'll not be facing the top 6 side between now and the end of the season unless they get in the playoffs. So, especially in the short term where it'll go Glenavon and then a couple of top 6 sides, there's not a lot of room for, or at least easy room for Oran to try and change things up, or he's going to have to get a huge result from this team. And perhaps what we're going to see here is that the people who are in charge of Coleraine go, this season has fallen apart, which there's no doubt it has. Anybody externally can see that, and internally. And perhaps they're just waiting for the summer to restart again. And this feeling that there's pressure on Owen Kearney, it's like, well, there isn't. It hasn't worked out, and they're going to give it a go in the summer. Or if there's going to be a change, it's going to be in the summer. There, it's something where I think we're all on manager change watch for Coleraine, and I feel like I've been there, and now I'm on the other side where I'm like, perhaps it can't get any worse for Coleraine, and they're going to stick by them. They've made their statement saying we're going to get better, or they're hoping to get better, and they're going to trust their man. So it doesn't feel like a week to week thing. Of course, watch it all change this weekend, but I mean, it's a team that needs an overhaul from an identity point of view, from a squad playing point of view. It needs to all start again, and you can see some of those elements in Brown and Scott and McGonigal. If there's going to be changes, those three are not going to be the ones that are shifted in June, bar an absolutely terrible end of the season. But there's no doubting here, while Linfield and Larne and Cliftonville stay consistent, what's happening up on the North Coast is a massive story right now that everyone's following, and it's just not a positive one.
Who's to say what's right and what's wrong here? Coleraine, we're all very knee jerk and getting rid of managers. As soon as a couple of results don't go our way, we're suddenly shouting at the manager. But it's he has to get a tune out of his players now, and got to get something. I mean, the amount of goals that they're conceding now is astronomical for a Coleraine side at that level. They're over 50 now, and it's not something that you should be building a team around. It's not looking good for them, and how they turn it around, that's Warren Kearney's job. I mean, that's what he's there for at the difficult times.
Football, it should really be a simple game. I guess it is a simple game. Score lots of goals, don't concede many, and you'll win in and week out. That just seems like Cliftonville's answer. It's like, what did Cliftonville do? Well, we score lots of goals, and we don't really concede many, and we win out, which is what they did against Ballymena. I decided to throw my dice into the mix there and say maybe we could have seen a shock. Of course we didn't. It was Cliftonville did Cliftonville things. They pass it around. They make you concede penalties. They just dazzle you with passing and goals and work. And look, it's that man again. It's Ronan Hale. He's excellent. He's great. This is a really good team. And it's 3-0. And it was all capped off by a beautiful goal from Ronan Doherty. Who needs Chris Gallagher, I guess?
Yeah, sort of thought about that goal, and I tried to think of a few adjectives. I sort of went in the word and put the word beautiful in, and tried to find some synonyms for that, for beautiful, and picturesque and thing came up. But whatever you wanted, that was just, I mean, I don't know where you saw it. One of the fans had taped it from behind the goals, and it looked even just a beautiful angle of him dropping the shoulder to lose his defender, and then the curl on the left foot right into the top corner, showing he didn't even move. And it was just a perfect ending for Cliftonville, just that little bit of quality. Because, I mean, again, for the three teams at the top, none of their managers actually said that they played well last weekend, but they all came away with clean sheets and 3 wins, and they just marched on. So none of them really played to their highest capability, but Cliftonville were good enough here. Plenty of half chances, hit the bar a couple of times, and and then just that, as I say, that perfect finish from Ronan Doherty. But you've mentioned about the penalty. I don't know whether you've, dearie me, I wasn't a happy man about that one. He's Dylan Boyle, I think it was, at the back. He has left his leg out, but really, really just goes over it, and it looks like a penalty. Smelt like a penalty, but when you actually looked at it a little bit more, it did look very, very soft, and sort of Dylan Boyle turning around thinking that's gone for a goal kick, and then suddenly, the hands go up in the air, he's giving a penalty. I just thought that was a little bit soft.
You know what? It passes the eye test at least 9 times out of 10. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here now, clicking through the frames as they go along, and perhaps you could argue, but I mean, I didn't even have a question mark. Wasn't even a note. I wasn't even going to bring it up because I thought it was pretty clear cut. But again, that's what Cliftonville do to you. They constantly get the ball in the box, and if you are a team in the bottom 6, especially a team like Ballymena away, you are going to panic because if you don't hassle them out of the way, they're going to pull off a tight little cross that they're going to beat you. And this is exactly what Cliftonville do. It's all about one-on-ones. It's all about duels, and they win out consistently. Didn't even need Roy Hale. One thing I'd say about this is that Ballymena looked firm. Like, the way I say I feel like they've improved defensively is that at the start of the season, and particularly just after that start of the season, they look hapless. There was lots of silly mistakes, like just ball would fall in, no one goes for it, aren't clearing it. And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Yes, they're not winning week in and week out. They're not scoring a bag full of goals. Fraser Taylor constantly looks a threat when he's on the ball. But they have tightened up. They have limited those moments where you can give the other team an edge. And that's a decent foundation that they can build on. They've got that gap between them and Newry. And with those games ticking away, if they can avoid losing and maybe sneak the odd win here, which I think they've done against Coleraine, which doesn't seem that they sneaked it now, but at the time they definitely did, and against Glenavon, this is a team who could just get by. They've definitely got to progress and move on and build on this beyond this season if they can get out of this season with their Premiership status alive. But I can see the fingerprints of Jim Irvin on this side, and if they can keep that up, they're looking all right.
Point you're kind of making there is that previously you didn't have to sort of beat Ballymena, they beat themselves a wee bit. You know, they were giving away. But on Saturday there, for example, Cliftonville still had to go and beat them. They had to put their chances away. It wasn't just a turn up, they'll give us a few freebies in the box and we'll stick them away and we'll win comfortably. Ballymena do look as if they've got a little bit in both boxes now, whereas it did look as if they were sinking towards the bottom fairly quickly. But Taylor looks real live wire in the middle of the park. He's got that MO now of just picking the ball up 60 yards out and running with it and seeing where it goes.
We'll wrap up the trio of victories for the top three with Larne being able to shake off that slight little hoodoo that the Swifts have had over them this season by winning out 2-0 at Stangmore Park. Another gutsy performance from the Swifts, but they aren't able to absolutely finish the job against some of the best teams in the league. I mean, Dungannon totally fine here. I don't think they're going to have any issue with relegation trouble. They are scoring goals. They're looking tighter at the back, and the story of their season has been that they've looked good but haven't really been able to get results. I think on this occasion, the quality of Larne rung true, and it's probably the fitness as well that the likes of the Miller just knows to follow on from that Joe Thompson long shot. The Swifts look great. They're just beaten by a better side.
Wholeheartedly agree that there's not going to be any issues at Dungannon Swifts. In fact, I mentioned earlier that I think they could even get into the mix for that sixth and seventh eventually if we keep going. They just look like a Rodney McAree team again now. They do look more solid. They've got a structured way of playing. He looks as if he's got it going, and just probably on the back of Tuesday night's disappointment, they did play. You know, and we're mentioning about teams not playing, other teams having to play more fixtures. When you're Dungannon, you're having to play twice in the week, and you're up against Larne on a Saturday. You know, it does take its toll on you, and and just that extra little bit of quality from Larne there just got them over the line. They'll be disappointed, Dungannon, that they didn't get anything out of the game, but that's the top teams in the league, and just with that semi-final loss, as I say, a little bit tough on them. But they've got to tie away at Ballyclare now coming up. That'll not be easy. Ballyclare doing quite well in the championship, but if they can get through that, I wouldn't be surprised if the Swifts can give the cup a bit of a charge this year as well, the Irish Cup as well. So I think they're okay at the minute.
It's inches, not miles, for the Swifts. I mean, it's Joe Thompson almost loses that ball before he lets rip, and again, it's Miller's able to run onto it. On another occasion, that ball doesn't fall back into Scott and it gets knocked in, and we're sitting here with a 0-0 draw, or one of those great old breakaways from Dungannon slips away, and it's another great result for the Swifts over Larne. So, I mean, I don't want to down them with faint praise, but this is a side I think will push on the rest of the season, and with being 4 or 5 points away, maybe 6 away from Carrick, they look good against bottom 6 sides in particular, and they'll have the confidence with nothing really to lose. We will look ahead to this weekend's games in a mo. Not as much toing and throwing in the transfer market as we approach its final week. We did see 2 incomings for Crusaders, which we mentioned there alongside Joshua. We also added in McCalmont. All this talk of Benji McGee Now there's talk that he's going to stay at Loughgall, which is slightly surprising. I think he's out of contract this summer, but look, we all know how Irish League contracts work. They're kind of a mystery. Maybe he's got longer there. Maybe he will stick between now and the end of the season. And we heard Lawrence saying that they don't want players going out, but they would happy to add a few more players in. I'm sure that's Lauren's mantra all the time. There's still plenty of teams sniffing around. Cliftonville's players talking the papers that a bid from Mallin's been rejected. Did the Crews stick a bid in for Keelan from Dungannon? Don't know. These are just other people that are putting it out there, or the journalists putting out there into the mix. So quiet, but I wonder, are teams just happy enough with the way things are going? Again, the top sides must feel like they're doing all right. At the bottom, is there really much movement to fire stuff in? I think with the Crews in particular, I mean, playing Burns and Laurie as your centre backs for a half, with Forsyth being dropped into right back, does sort of say that you're at the bottom of your depth chart, which is strange because, whereas Corey Burns, he isn't playing. We saw Jay Boyd at the top of the pitch come in. He didn't get any minutes there on Saturday. So again, with the Crews, the question is how much, if they're going to bring somebody in, is it worth doing it short term, or do they look further ahead? Feeney's come out for Glentoran and said that he doesn't want to waste any money. He wants to do it right, but in turn, this isn't really his squad. So if he wants to change things up and get into Europe, maybe he wants to tweak things further. But yeah, interesting couple of days. I've seen in the past couple of years that deadline day has been more exciting than it used to be in the league, and perhaps we just need the little dagger above everybody else of a deadline to force through some more deals.
I can see that happening. Been quite a lot of moves in the championship already, but not so much in the Premiership so far. But I could certainly see a few happening towards deadline day. As you said, it does seem to have got a bit more sort of traction over the past few years. I looked at Crusaders in particular in terms of transfers, and when I saw that potential bid for Keelan Marnock, and look, I can certainly see why they'd be looking at that, and trying to get some players in to shore it up. I, I look at Glentoran's quote as well, Warren Finney's quote about spending money. I'm just looking at Crusaders thinking, yeah, you've got a wee bit of money in the background, obviously, to spend, but what's the point at the minute of them going out and making a big money signing if that player is going to be available in the summer? Because Crusaders are not going to challenge for the title. That chip's gone, but they're also not going to drop out of the top six. So I mean, they're going to finish in that top six position. They're going to get a playoff. They're now out of the cup, so that would have been their old last couple of years. We're going to keep playing for the cup, try and qualify for Europe via the cup. That unfortunately is gone for them as well. So if they go out and spend 30,000-40,000 pounds on a centre half or a back, where's it going to get them this season? Is it really going to be that beneficial to them this season? Could they keep that money and then go big in the summertime and try and build a squad again? And the other thing they could do is up top, could you start to blood those younger ones and sort of see what they can do for the rest of the season, and try and sort of, even if it's to see if you don't think they're good enough, and next year you can say, right, well, we've given you 7, 8 games towards the end of the season. Our opinion is you're not up to the standard. We're going to bring other people in, because at the minute, I mean, they brought Nixon in, obviously from Carrick via Queens, and I had heard that possibly James Teelan was part of that deal. It may come to fruition, may not, but James Teelan was touted at the start of the season as he's going to watch Paul Heatley for a season and then step into his shoes. But he's hardly had a kick for Crusaders at the minute, and bringing another winger in packs him down the order a little bit more again. So looking at Crusaders, it's really
Who
interesting.
jumped ahead of him in the team on Saturday as
Yeah,
well.
so you're thinking, is he going to be hanging around, or is it long term? And then you look at other clubs. I just think at this time of year, it's very difficult for clubs to say, well, do we go out and spend a lot of money to try and get to a position where we sort of could get to, and then if it doesn't go well, that budget is so much less in the summer because we've gone hard in January. So that's maybe why you're seeing a little bit of patience, maybe wariness of going in right now. But it's the old thing. If one domino falls, the last few days could be quite interesting.
Eyes peeled. Twitter bans will be here. Just stay tuned to @KickyMatch, and I'll try and get all the ones. I'll try to get the news straight to you with some quippy remark. So, 6 games, all going well, in the grace of God. We'll go to Friday. It's the one that's penciled in for the stream. Can Cliftonville deal with the trampoline park that is Taylor's Avenue?
Oh boy.
I think they can.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I sort of mentioned about the three teams at the top, and I hope that it would go well for all three of them, and we have a really good charge at it for the last few weeks of the season. But obviously, this Friday, I'll be hoping that Cliftonville get a little bit derailed this Friday, and then they can go on and win all round them. Yeah, look, it'll be tough. Cliftonville have played a couple of times down at the Lockview this year in the County Antrim Shield. They were turned over with obviously a bit of a second string, but when they played again, it was a very interesting game. It was the first Sunday game, I think, if you remember. During the international break, we played on a Sunday, and again, kudos to Cliftonville for actually agreeing to that. A lot of clubs didn't agree to a Sunday game, and Cliftonville give it a go. And I think if I remember back to the game, the crowd was up by about 25-30% that Sunday, well over 1,200 in that day. So a normal Cliftonville game probably would only get 800 or 900. So we were all, and there was a whole squad of Denmark fans in that, that day as well. So it was really interesting to see, and they made a lot of noise. But it was a really good game. Carrick really played well and just didn't take their chances. Cliftonville were clinical, and Rory Hale had one of his days, and he just was a class above that day. And we talk about the pitch, but it didn't matter to him. He was able to sort of run the game that day, and he was the difference between the two teams on that afternoon. So look, it'll be tough for Cliftonville. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. They may well come out on top, but fancy a Jers to maybe nick a draw.
I kind of do as well, but then it feels like I'm just trying to recorrect what I said last week, that Ballymena might have the shock of the season by sneaking something in. So, like, I kind of can see this being a 1-1 0-0, and I mean, just all of the balls that Cliftonville are trying to play on the deck are just not going for them. They get so close up to the other end of the pitch, and it's just it bobbles away, or it goes against them, or they aren't able to keep it at their feet. So I'm not trying to overplay the bobble there, but I mean, it doesn't exactly suit their style of nip and tuck and fast passing. But in turn, and as well as that, it's not like Cliftonville have a plan B in a big burly man that they can just fire it in after countless corners to try and knock it in, kind of thing. It's just not their style of play. So I can see that frustrating them, but I will just go. I'm going to say 3-1 here to the Reds. I think Carrick will snatch something here, but it will not be the points, unfortunately. Another game on Friday. It is Larne against Newry. Newry got a little break after their game against Loughgall was wiped away by the weather. I mean, Newry almost got a great result against Larne early in the season at the showgrounds, but I mean, nobody's getting results at Inver Park, and I wouldn't have the bottom team in the league high on my list of potential streak killers there.
I think that Larne team you're talking about that was playing at that stage was a little bit of a different animal to the Larne team that's on show at the minute. So look, it's top v bottom. It's not quite top, but you understand what I mean. It's a top two team against the bottom side. Yes, Barry Gray's come in and given a little bit of bounce factor, as they say, to Newry, but you're going to one of the toughest places to go to. Look, the only thing I would say is obviously, a lot of talk about it around the league about Larne playing on Friday nights, but they're going to play Saturday, Tuesday, and then Friday. So they've actually brought this game to a Friday night at home, which they usually do. Fair play to them, because they're trying to develop the crowd, etc. But they're going to play Tuesday, Friday now. So yes, they've got a big squad, and who knows who's going to play on Tuesday night in the County Antrim Shield final. But you know, playing Tuesday, Friday, the only thing that may sort of give Newry a squeak here is if they can hang on for 60, 70 minutes, possibly a little bit of fatigue kicked in. Obviously, the professionalism of Larne, the fitness should be better, but maybe to give Newry a little bit of a chance, hold on for 60 or 70 and hope that Larne get a little bit tired towards the last 20 and can't push it home. But I think we're clutching at the clutchiest of straws there.
AKA, you're thinking Lauren is some sort of like tired matador that'll just wave the red or pink cape, trying to tire out Newry because Lauren are so wrecked from whatever happens on the Tuesday evening in the Cutter Adam Shield, and then at the end they stick the sword in.
Well,
I think they will, and I think the matador with the sword that
yeah.
game will be a Lee Bonus, who is very much looking to get back on track when it comes to his scoring record. Gonna say 2-0. Newry will say we're getting better, but we're not close. And they move on. Saturday, one of my favourite fixtures of the season so far. Ballymena, Loughgall. Always a bit fun. Goals going back and forward. And I think that will actually be the undoing of Ballymena. They don't score many. Loughgall like to score plenty. And I think that's why they're going to win out 3-1.
Could be a big game this for Ballymena, because if they can't get this home win, and we do expect Newry to lose, and that will be a 7 point gap they've opened up there at the bottom. Loughgall, obviously, bit of a strange time for them as well. They're slap bang in the middle of that European spot, and would we have said that at the start of the season, that coming into the last dozen games of this season, Loughgall were in the shoot of qualifying for Europe, but they're still slap bang in the middle of that, as I say. And if they can pick up points here, I actually see this being a very high scoring draw. I go 2-2, even 3 each here. I could see this being a real humdinger for the Saturday at radio, and getting back to the guy at the game every couple of minutes to say there's been another goal at the showgrounds here. So I could see that being 3-3, or maybe somebody next to 7 goaler.
Usually would be my special. A little bit on the line here where I would say, I can't talk about last week. I think Loughgall win here and they are almost safe. They would make it a pretty decent difference between them and Ballymena. It's like a 6 pointer in that regard when it
Yeah,
comes to being dragged into even
yeah.
11th. So, I mean, a lot for Loughgall to play for. I think that's a team who knows that staving off relegation was their aim. It ain't done yet, I'm sure, in their eyes. And there is also the little brass ring they could get with a European playoff spot. So, yes, 2-2 for you. I'm going to say 3-1. We'll remain with Saturday because we've got nowhere else to go. Glens Cruise. How will Glens be off the back of their County Antrim Shield? Will they be tired? Will they look for revenge? Will they be on cloud nine? I saw a better Cruise side there. I believe they might have Heatley back. Will they maybe play the likes of Lecky or Owens from the start? I think this could be a little interesting litmus test, as when it comes to European places rather than playoff spots, but actually winning it, it could come down to these two at the end of the season if the cups go to one of the top three and the top three stays the top three. So, who gets a little bit of the advantage here? I mean, it is a home game for the Crews, so I kind of fancy another score draw here, but again, Glentoran and the team here are in semi a bit of form.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there, that it maybe doesn't mean that much in itself at the minute, but winning this game could get you into that fourth position, and if one of those top three sides do win the cup, that could get you a home game in the playoffs, etc. So could be useful, and these two have had a little bit of needle in the last couple of months. The last game there was a good bit of needle, and I think actually the big injury to Bobby Burns at that stage was, thankfully, he's back, and I just think Glentoran, just a wee bit of form now, and Crusaders, just not sure what their plan is at the minute. Are they sort of heading for? I just don't see a real structure there at the minute. That could be good and bad, very inconsistent, as that would suggest. So I just think Glentoran hitting a wee bit of form, had a little bit of break, but I do think a lot of it will come down. There's a bit of a cliche here on how they do form on Tuesday night. If they come out of that with a trophy, I think the dressing room will be buzzing and they can see where they're going. Lose to Larne on Tuesday, and they might feel a little bit sorry for themselves. So, but I think they could do quite well on Tuesday as well, and I think Glentoran could win this one by the odd goal.
Coleraine, Glenavon, we talked about it earlier on, just how this is a small little window before the real wolves come after Coleraine. It's at home again. If you're a Coleraine fan right now, you're thinking everybody looks like this big monolithic enemy right now. But, Glenavon come off a real stinger of a loss to Portadown, still in their memories. They aren't able to change much against Glentoran in that game on Friday after being cancelled. So, I mean, do they have a bit of life, spark themselves up for Coleraine? It's a weird fixture. Usually, I feel like Glenavon get a good result up at the Coleraine Showgrounds, but I feel like I have to back them here again to do something similar, and which I probably will do. I think it's a 2-1 maybe to Glenavon, and it's just another weekend Groundhog Day of the same thoughts and feelings when it comes to the Coleraine side of things.
Yeah, I think come this time next week, I think you could be chatting to somebody else saying the same things about Coleraine, because I do think Glenavon can go up there and get a result. Coleraine need to win, or at the very least, get a performance out in a draw. But they cannot lose this game. I can't see. It's just the protest just grow and grow and grow now, and everything just becomes a the Rolling Stone gathering just every weekend. So they need a performance, and whether or not, just having watched them on Saturday, the lack of confidence, whether or not Oran Kearney can just galvanise that team and say, right, look, just even maybe give an old Braveheart speech before it or something and say, come on, lads, we've got to do this one more time, and just get something out of the players. It would be listen, it would be great to see if he could turn it around and get something out of them. It'd be a really nice story just turning it around. But I just think Glenavon, Steve McDonald will be doing something similar after that Portadown game, and I think they just might have a wee bit of quality on the break here, and could win this one.
Revenge game for both keepers with them doing the swap. Maybe both teams will know their weakness
Yeah,
and it'll be a mad
yeah,
6-7 game because I don't know, one team will aim for insert keepers here, bottom left hand corner because they know that's where he can't save. So we'll see what happens there. We end with potentially one of the more predictable results of the weekend. Dungannon go to Linfield, try and get a bit of revenge for the Cup semi final loss, pretty much the way we started this podcast. Dungannon did give Linfield one heck of a scare before the new year there. But Linfield continue to do the business at Windsor Park, and unless I see otherwise, especially with Joel Cooper getting a couple of minutes, could he come in from the start? I mean, Linfield have the quality to win out. They have that big, massive pitch and the advantage of playing on it. So Dungannon, give us the biggest shock of the season again, because I think they've probably provided the biggest overturning results so far. This added to your
mm.
collection.
Yeah. And look, here's my Peter Cinnamon Ballymena moment coming up here. I think Dungannon can get something here. I do think they can get a result here. I think they can possibly get a draw, and maybe even nick it. But I do think they're worthy of a draw here. I think they're playing good football, and as I said earlier in the show, there, I think Rodney McAree's got his team playing the way he wants them to play now. He's got the personnel now he wants. He's got the target man up front now, and a few guys that can play him off him. And I just think Linfield are getting by at the minute, and eventually I think they will click. I do really think that they will click and give us that three-team run in for the league. But I just think this game could close it up a little bit, because I do think Larne will win. Cliftonville, yeah, and I think Linfield could maybe drop a couple of points here.
Could you imagine? I'm sitting here this time next week, and all three of them drop points exactly the same weekend. That would just be typical. But I can't see it. I think Linfield win out
Be a good pod.
two. It would be a good pod, I'll tell you that. I think Linfield will win out 2-0 here. However, I will prefix that with the point of Linfield are creaking at times, and when it all falls down, I'll go, we all saw it coming. But I feel like I've been saying that for weeks now. So 2-0 Linfield, and that's our wrap. Ali, there was not as many games to talk about, but we squeezed plenty of chat in. Great little week, as we talked about, only a few more days, minutes, hours of the January transfer window to entice us. But I mean, it's mad to think that we are only a few weeks away from single digits in this league calendar. It's all speeding along very, very quickly. But as I say at this juncture every week, sir, where can people find other things that
Yep.
you lay your hands to?
Yeah, on my Twitter feed, I'm at Drawing the Trade is on my Twitter feed, is my personal one. Obviously, I still do Sunday Life, which is coming up towards their own very big transfer window coming up at the start of February. That'll be coming in if you want to change a few players there. That'll be coming in. So keep an eye on the Sunday Life for that. My Twitter feed there is at Sunday SL Fantasy. So that keeps me busy for the rest of the season. It's really enjoyable, and it gets me really involved in the league, liking to see players obviously coming and going. And we're getting to the business end of that, the competition. So that should be good as well. And obviously with the football, and I'm a big cricket man as well, as you know, Peter. The cricket season coming up in April, I'll be doing a lot of commentaries, and you'll catch me on YouTube and across the webs and things like that during the summer, doing a lot of cricket work.
Any talk of artificial surfaces in the cricket world? Any debates over moving to a winter season or anything like that? No.
Well, now you've mentioned it. There's been a lot of talk about drop-in pitches and things like that, obviously. But yeah, look, it is a thing. Obviously, the lower leagues and here we have gone the artificial pitches. You can't play on artificial
You're
wickets in the
joking me,
lower leagues,
actually.
no, absolutely. Yeah, it just means you can play then, and a lot of most practice pitches for training is artificial. It's like AstroTurf, so just this is the actual wicket I'm talking about now, not the
Mm-hmm.
outfield. The outfield has to be grass, but your actual wicket can be artificial. So most clubs have an artificial wicket for training, but as far as going for the whole AstroTurf for the whole game, that's a long way off.
I know this is probably very niche, and I doubt any of them are of like to a high ability, but I've heard on the grapevine that there's a couple of Irish League players who aren't a bad hand at the old cricket. Is there anybody that you happen to know off the top of your head who aren't bad
I do.
with
I've got
either
a
a
couple of
ball
boys
or,
there.
or a bat?
Well, actually, the guy we were talking about earlier that moved from Coleraine down to Dungannon, Andy Mitchell, was a very very good cricketer
I've
for
heard he's
Waringstown.
good. Yep.
Uh, yeah, really good. He's a wicket keeper. Really excellent. Quite strange because obviously he's quite tall, and usually wicket keepers are quite sort of stocky. But he was an excellent wicket keeper for Waringstown, and obviously the Waringstown Glenavon story goes quite deep. You know, Adam Dennison, the Dennisons that played at Waringstown, obviously very connected with Glenavon, and Adam Dennison, who currently plays with Waringstown, his cousin is Gary Hamilton. So they're all very connected, that club. So yeah, loads of switchovers, and that's obviously my worry. Then if the summer football comes in, that'll never happen again. Then as I go back to my roots, it was always. If you ever remember a comic called The Tiger, it had a strip called Billy's Boots, and Billy's Boots used to tell him where to go in the football season. He'd put these boots on, but in the off season he would put the cricket boots on and go and play cricket. And that's the way it used to be. You'd play football up to May, stop, play cricket then, and start your football up again in September. And I would love to get back to that, but unfortunately, football's a 52 week thing now, which is just the way things move. But yeah, look, it'd be great to see boys playing both sports again.
I could go on and talk about how really that's why the football's played during the winter, because of the cricket season. You only need to look back at the history of Cliftonville. That was, of course, cricket, and then it was football. But we will halt there. That's between you and your YouTube search engine, dear listener. It's been a pleasure, Ali. Until next time. I don't know if my acoustics sound a wee bit differently today or this week. I don't know. It probably sounded exactly the same. And updates to a room that you never see, listener. I've got a new bookcase behind me. It's kind of just up to my left hand side shoulder. It's pretty good. It's going to keep all my random Stephen King books that I just keep buying now. I did see this week that I didn't know this because I haven't got this book just yet. He actually wrote in, was it Bucky Thistle into one of his books, into If It Bleeds. I can't read yet, to get through other books to get there, but I did listen to that and I thought, what, that is a very, very Stephen King. Like, it's just such a kind of a daft and kind of cutesy name. I'm like, yeah, I totally get why he would do that. I don't know, all the smart people on TV seem to have like bookcases behind them, so maybe it's a thing. Thanks for listening. I hope you're well. I hope you're warm. That's the more important thing. I've already told you that you can subscribe and follow this podcast pretty easy. Maybe you want to sit back with a book and listen to this podcast at the same time, but you can't be bothered to get a phone out or tap the podcast to play it. But if you happen to have a smart device, you can just go, hey, smart speaker, please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast, and boom, you are multitasking. But if you happen to have your phone or your laptop or something at you, you know you can follow this podcast on social media pages. It's pretty good, especially as I said with all the transfer news coming on. So it's at Kicking Match on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's all there. It's easy. You might even see my smile little face every time I post that up. Anyway, thanks for listening. Until next time, and I'm sure there'll be a next time. Cheerio. Bye.